Yo, what is up? It is your boys out there, back with part 3 to what if Deku had Shirakumos powers. Now, as I clearly saw in the second part, you guys massacred the like button. So, again, I'm going to be leaving you guys the goal of 20 likes. And if you guys hit that within today, I'll be uploading part 4 of this amazing series today. Also, with that being said, I'm also going to be uploading what if Naruto had absolute cancel. So after you're done with this, go ahead and check that out. It'll probably be soon, about an hour to 30 minutes after this video. But yeah, with that being said, let's just go ahead and get into this recap and into the video. So on the last part, we had basically left off with the USJ attack as well as the heroes versus villains, and Deku had basically just kind of, you know, had a little encounter with Kurogiri, and Kurogiri basically faltered a little bit as soon as he saw Deku in the cloud court. If you guys kept up to what's going on, then you guys will know what I mean. Now, let's just go ahead and hop into the UA Sports Festival. So, it would be announced to them that they have a week break, about a 2-week break. And Deku would basically decide that he's not just going to sit around, he's going to train. He's going to work hard to become even stronger than he already is. So, what he does is that he trains to develop a new move. Now at this point, as we all know, he has the ability to control clouds in the sky as well as teleport through them, but he hasn't actually shown those abilities yet. He's keeping those as his ace in the hole. During this 2-week break, actually, he's going to be working on turning himself into a cloud. A way to turn himself intangible. A way to make himself not be able to be attacked physically. And he'll also be working on cloud clones. That's something that was suggested to me by you guys on the first and second part. So shout out to you guys who ended up commenting that stuff. I really appreciate the feedback. And you guys already know I always take my feedback into consideration. So, you know, I definitely I figured, you know, I would throw that in there. So he would basically be practicing on how to turn himself into a cloud by basically thinking about all of his cloud powers. He'll be thinking about the fact that he can do many things and start to think outside of the box. He would think, hey, what if I try to make cloud clones? And he would basically shoot out some cloud out of his hand, and basically it would turn into him. After this, he would begin to spar with it and would realize that, you know, like, it's pretty solid. It feels like a real him, but it can't take too much damage or else it'll pop. Now, he'll also be working on turning himself into a cloud by basically seeing that the clones can basically get hit and turn into cloud themselves. So he wonders if he can do that or if that's just a clone only ability. So for the next couple weeks, he'll be basically learning on how to make more cloud clones and how to turn himself intangible, aka turning himself into a cloud. So yeah. Now, we're just going to go ahead and skip all the way up until the I was about to say USJ, the sports festival. Now, during the sports festival, it would basically be told to him that he's actually going to be giving the speech. And when he gets told that he's going to do that, he's going to be like, what? I didn't sign up for this. What do you mean? And Midnight will basically just be like, go up there and just say whatever you want. And Deku would be like, okay. This is when Deku would basically proceed to give an inspirational speech. I'm not gonna give it. Like, I really don't feel like being like, oh yeah guys, try your hardest. It's just something like that. Just some nice guy shit. Like, everybody try your hardest and let's be the greatest heroes we can be. And like the crowd just started cheering. Something like that. Let's just imagine that. Now, this is when it'll basically be announced that they're going to be doing a race. And Deku would actually smile at the thought of a race because he knows he's going to win. Because he can either teleport there or just use his Nimbus to get there. This is when Deku would basically decide that he's just going to go ahead and use his Nimbus. So as soon as the race gets started, Deku would basically see that Todoroki was getting ready to shoot a giant ice. And Deku would be like, yeah, not happening. So as soon as the whistle is blown, Deku would begin to run and shoot a cloud out in front of him. And this is when he would basically jump on it and start flying away towards the finish line at an immense speed, getting first place. Now the rest of the race would basically go to canon with Todoroki and Bakugou fighting for second and third place, and the rest of everybody getting the same exact placements that they did in canon. Now, everybody in the stands, and as well as Aizawa and Present Mike, would actually be praising Deku and, you know, just fucking sucking this man off for his quirk the entire time. Being like, yeah, that's our top student right there. Cloud powers. And let's just say they're doing this just, you know, for a little bit of homage to Shirakumo, you know, just a little bit of a, yeah. Deku would basically get to first place, and the crowd would start cheering for him, thinking that he's actually a really awesome hero candidate. I mean, he has the speed, he has the personality. They just want to see if he has the strength to back up being a hero. Now, after that, it would be announced they're going to be doing cavalry battles, and that would basically lead to Deku being told that he's going to get the 10 million points. Now, once Deku gets the 10 million points, everybody would basically look at him with killer intent, but Deku wouldn't fall to that. He wouldn't falter, he wouldn't feel scared, and he would hold his head high. This is when he would basically go up to Uraraka and tap her on the shoulder and say, "Hey, do you want to be on a team with me?" And Uraraka will basically be like, "Of course, Deku." Now, Bakugou would actually walk up to him and say, "Hey, let's be on a team." And Deku would basically turn and be like, "She's on it too." And Bakugou would be like, "Whatever." Now, this is when Hatsume would actually come up to them and be like, "Hey, can I join you guys?" And Deku would be like, "I don't see why not." Now, this is when the other teams would basically be announced, and let's just say that Tokiyami goes on the team that Bakugou was supposed to go on, and yeah, that's the only real change that's gonna happen. So, when that happens, the whistle gets blown, and this is when Deku would basically go to create a giant cloud. He would tell them all to hop on, and they would basically just fly through the air. During that time, Todoroki would basically be trying to create a giant ice path for them to get up to them, but every time he did that, Deku would basically just fly around at top speed and take out his power pole and just start smacking Todoroki. And at one point, Todoroki fell off of his team, making him almost lose, but Todoroki would have actually caught himself with a big thing of ice and slid all the way back to his team. Now, this is when Bakugou would basically get tired of this and be like, Deku, come on, let's fight them. And Deku would be like, "Dude, we're gonna fight them on the next round. I have a strong feeling it's gonna be combat, and I don't want to risk losing here." And Bakugou would look at him and be like, "Whatever, as long as you fight me, Deku." And Deku would basically look at him and be like, "Of course, Bakugou, but you already know I'm gonna win, right?" And Bakugou would be like, "We'll have to see about that." Now, they would basically end up winning, since there's really no way around it. Let's be honest, boys. Who is going to do anything to them? Anyways, they would win that, and this is when the matches would be announced. The bracket would basically be the same as the original canon, with Deku versus Shinso in the first match. And yeah, so before the matches actually get started, Todoroki doesn't have any daddy issues, so there's no really talking to Deku and telling him that he's a secret love child like a dumbass. And instead, it's just going to be Deku versus Shinso, and Todoroki will just be following himself, you know, focusing on his own match instead of thinking about Deku. Meaning that Tape Boy won't actually be fucked up as bad as in canon. He'll just be taken out pretty easily, and Todoroki would go on to the next round. Now, Deku would go up to fight Shinso, and once he gets in there, Ojiro would actually tell Deku that Shinso has some sort of weird quirk and not to talk to him. But Deku would take this into account, but as soon as he gets into the ring, Shinso would basically start talking to Deku, telling him that it must be nice to have such an amazing quirk and have your life handed to you. This is when Deku would actually get angry and just start rushing at Shinso and try to punch him, but Shinso would basically dodge barely and then begin to say, "And that girlfriend of yours, she seems pretty weak. She can't do anything on her own." This would make Deku basically snap and be like, "What the hell do you?" Before he can finish it, Shinso would smile and be like, "Gotcha." Now after this, Deku would basically be told to walk off the stage, and Deku would begin to walk off. But this is when what would happen in the original canon would happen, and Deku would flick his finger, creating a massive gust of wind, scaring basically shocking the crowd, being like, "What the fuck? He has this much power?" And Shinso would be shocked as Deku would basically realize that he was under mind control and look at his broken finger, realizing that he needs to become stronger with One For All and hone his body more. He needs to stop focusing on his quirk for a little while and really focus on One For All, because he's been neglecting it for a little while and just basically using it to increase his quirk. Instead of that, he's thinking he should definitely use it that way, and as well as using it to improve him physically. So after this, Deku would basically proceed to whoop Shinso and not really have any hard feelings, since he knows that Shinso's quirk basically works like that. So Deku would proceed to win that match. And yeah, What's next? Bakugou versus Uraraka, I believe. Yeah, Bakugou versus Uraraka, I think. No. That was after Deku versus Todoroki. Yeah. So basically every other match that happens in the bracket basically goes pretty much to canon. And yeah. So, what's it called? Deku basically is told that he's going to be fighting Todoroki. Now this is when Todoroki does something. When they're waiting inside of the little waiting area that they have, Todoroki would walk into the room and declare war on Deku, basically telling him that he's going to win this time and that under these circumstances there's no way he's going to lose. He would also tell Bakugou that he better get his act together because he's going to be the one to win and they're just going to be stuck with second and third place. This should actually make Deku pretty hyped up and he'd be like, we'll see about that, Todoroki. They would all have a sort of stare down before going off in their own direction. Now, after this, the battle with Todoroki and Deku would begin. And since Todoroki isn't really thinking that much about his daddy issues, he wouldn't really focus too much on Deku or have any sort of hatred towards him. Now, this also means that Todoroki would be holding back most of the time. And yeah, so Deku versus Todoroki would start, and Todoroki would immediately use a huge glacier of ice, and Deku would basically create a cloud and just fly up into the air. He would start flying around Todoroki and create a cloud spear? No, not a spear. A cloud staff. He would create a physical cloud staff. Basically start smacking around Todoroki, as Todoroki's basically using ice to dodge every attack. Kind of like Agara's sand type of way. But this is when Todoroki would shoot a huge thing of ice and Deku wouldn't have any time to react, so he would decide to create to make himself intangible. He would go straight through the ice and rush at Todoroki, and this is when Todoroki would be kind of freaked out. He would have his fire side shoot at Deku and Deku would be like, whoa, as he dodges it and he's like, what the heck, I didn't know you had fire. Todoroki would say, you made me use the side that I hate, I'm gonna destroy you for that. And Deku would proceed to say, well, haven't you used it before? And Todoroki would basically start to tell him his backstory. Now, as soon as he starts telling his backstory to Deku, Deku would basically kind of resonate with him and really understand where Todoroki's coming from. But he would begin to tell him that, why is he being dumb? That's not Endeavor's quirk. A lot of people have fire quirks, and just because they have a fire quirk doesn't mean that they're like Endeavor. He's his own person, and that's his own quirk. His father isn't in use of it, so he can determine whether it's a good or bad quirk. And this would basically hit home with Todoroki. This is when he would activate his huge fire and ice attack, and Deku would basically be on the other side and proceed to basically get ready for this attack. Now, as soon as Todoroki uses it, Deku would basically become untangible and have a cloud clone behind Todoroki. Now, as soon as Deku becomes intangible, he would go straight up to Todoroki and go in for a punch. But Todoroki would dodge, and his clone would kick his leg, sweeping onto the ground, and Deku would then proceed to trap him inside of a cloud prison, and basically make that cloud prison float off into the grass, making Todoroki basically be the loser. Todoroki would have actually tried to use his ice to, expand it so much to the point where it just broke, but every time it would happen, Deku would crush his hand, slowly breaking each shard of ice, and Todoroki would have no choice but to stop because he was going to hurt himself if he kept going. So yeah, that results in Deku's victory, and yeah, all the other matches basically go to canon, and Todoroki, after the match, isn't angry with Deku, and he goes up to him and just basically thanks him. He's like, hey, Deku, thanks for what you said back there. I hope you win. You better win this for both of us, for mine and your sake. Deku would smile at him and say, of course, I got you. And Todoroki would go off, basically creating a sort of friendship between both of them. Now, this is when Bakugou versus Deku would be announced and who would be at the finals. As soon as the match starts, Bakugou would rush at him with the howitzer impact, and Deku would become intangible. Bakugou would be caught off guard and would basically use his quirk to turn around at a high speed and smack Deku. He would punch Deku across the ring, and Deku would basically block it with both arms, but he would definitely get flown back a bit. This is when Bakugou would basically say, I can see you've gotten stronger, Deku. That would have taken you out a long time ago. And Deku would basically look at Bakugou and say, I can say the same back to you. They would begin to basically rush at each other without using their quirks and begin to get into a hand-to-hand battle. Bakugou and Deku would actually be at a bit of a stalemate, since Deku has a little bit of technique and Bakugou has more finesse, as well as just raw battle talent, you know? So they would be on an equal ground until Deku would create a cloud clone and try to get Bakugou from behind, but Bakugou would shoot up into the sky and say, "You try to use that with half and half, but it won't work against me," as he basically propels himself into the air like Iron Man, and Deku's like, "Would have it any other way." This is when he would create a cloud and jump on it as quick as possible and create a staff. He would begin to try to rush at Bakugou and try to swing at him every chance he got, but Bakugou would just dodge every time and would actually destroy the staff that Deku was holding. Now, after that happens, Deku would actually be caught a little off guard, and Bakugou would proceed to say, "AP shot!" and go shooting an AP shot straight at Deku's chest. But Deku would turn inchangeable right before, and it would go straight through him. Now he would reform, and Bakugou would be right in front of him going, "Howitzer impact!" And this is when Deku would basically get hit by the blast, but not as much, because he would have created a cloud barrier between them, but it definitely would have done quite a lot of damage. Now his Nimbus would have actually caught him mid-air before he fell onto the ground, and Deku would basically smile and say, "Guess there's no way around it." He would then fall through the Nimbus, and everybody would think that he was going to hit the ground, but before they knew it, Deku would have basically teleported through two clouds behind Bakugou and taken a staff, one of his cloud staffs, and smacked him back down to the ring. This would have knocked Bakugou out, and it would be GG's. Now Deku would win, and this means that there would actually be no bitchy Bakugou, since he would just accept that Deku won, but think that he needs to get stronger if he wants to catch up to Deku. So Deku would be the winner, Bakugou would come in second, and Todoroki would come in third, ending the sports festival arc. And yeah, during this time, Ida's brother would have definitely gotten attacked by the hero killer Stain, and Ida would still have his whole usual thing. Now during this time of events, Deku and Ida wouldn't be as close as friends as they were in canon, but they would definitely still be kind of cool with each other. So if Ida was to get, go down bad, then Deku would basically still be affected by it. So yeah. Hold on, boys. There we go. Sorry. Now, so Ida would basically go on his whole revenge shit and be like a agent of revenge. Like, "You killed my entire family. I'm gonna get you, Itachi." No, I'm just kidding. That wouldn't happen. But yeah, he would basically go on his revenge shit. Now, Deku would notice the strange behavior with Ida, and this is when they would basically be told to pick names. Now, all the other names would go to canon, and Bakugou would pick the name of Dynamite. For those of you who didn't know that in canon, that in the manga, sorry that I spoiled it for you, but I already gave manga spoilers on the last video, so yeah. Bakugou would give out the name of Dynamite, and Deku would actually think that that's pretty badass. After that, he would basically take into consideration his Cloud quirk and basically call himself Cloud Hero Cloud 9. Thank you to the subscriber who basically commented that. I definitely used it, and shout out to you. His hero name would be Cloud 9, and this is when All Might would actually show up after the hero picking thing, and would basically tell Deku that even though he has a lot of offers, since he won, he got the second highest offers. Todoroki got first because he's the son of Endeavor, and Bakugou got third. He would actually get he wouldn't get best genius this time, and would actually he gets best genius. Todoroki goes to Endeavor, and Deku would be told by All Might that he should go with Gran Torino, his old master. Deku takes that into consideration and tells All Might that he would love to, because he's actually been thinking about improving himself with One For All and not really relying as much on his quirk as he has been. Now, All Might would actually smile to this and would tell him good luck. Now, this is when Deku would basically arrive to Gran Torino's house and would see Gran Torino on the ground with ketchup all over him. This is when Deku would freak out and he'd be like, "He's dead! He's dead! What the fuck? All Might!" And this is when Gran Torino would get up and be like, "Gotcha, kid." He'd be like, "Who are you again?" And then Deku would be like, "Ugh, you're one of those." And Gran Torino would basically smile. This is when Gran Torino would look at his costume and say, "It's a nice little outfit you got there." And Deku would basically proceed to say, "Yeah, it gets the job done." Now, this is when Gran Torino would basically start talking to him, and I'm just gonna say it, guys. His training would not have anything to do with using One For All throughout his body, since he already figured that out. He can use full cowling at 7% at this point with all the extra training he's done, and 10% with heavy strain on his body. Now, Gran Torino would basically tell him that if that's all he can use, he needs to work way harder on his body and way less on his quirk. He needs to take a little bit of a breather from his quirk. Definitely always keep his quirk in mind, but he can't always rely on it. And Deku would basically agree with Gran Torino. So this means that the entire time, Deku would basically be having to use 7% of one for all against Gran Torino and just basically get his ass whooped. Gran Torino would mainly be focusing on hand-to-hand combat with Deku and calisthenics. So during the nighttime, Deku would work his ass off with calisthenics, and during the daytime, he would spend his hours getting his ass beat by Gran Torino, getting that fear that All Might had for him as well. You're like, this man is too strong. And Torino would basically laugh. Now, he would actually text All Might and tell him he's getting the same treatment he got, and this would make All Might get shivers down his spine, thinking back to when he had to train with Gran Torino and being a little scared, truthfully. Now, they would basically go onto the Hosu train, and this is when they would basically be heading to the town when the Nomu busts in. But before the Nomu could bust in, Deku would create a cloud barrier around the train, making the Nomu have no impact on it. And Gran Torino and Deku would basically fly off into the town. Gran Torino would handle the Nomu, and Deku would fly into the town. Now, as he's flying on his cloud, so he's overseeing everything and looking into every alleyway to make sure that everybody's safe and looking around. He would fly around for a little bit, and he would see a huge explosion with the Nomu. He would begin to rush at it, but before he can, he hears something familiar. Ida's voice. He hears Ida going, "Ah!" And this basically means that Ida was just cut and taken some damage to the hero killer Stain. At this point, he would be paralyzed and Deku would fly in there. Now, right before Stain would actually kill Ida, Deku would create a cloud barrier between them both, and it would stop Stain's knife. Now, this is when Stain would look at him and be like, "Another fake hero." Deku would basically rush at Ida and Native, get them into the clouds, and take them on top of the building where they would be safe. Now, this is when Stain would actually look at Deku and say, "You are a true hero. You will be left alive." And this is when Deku would basically look at Stain and say, "And you will be taken to jail for what you've done." And this is when Stain would say, "Is that so?" So they would begin to have a battle, and Stain would try to use his knives, but every time he tried, Deku would basically use his clouds to stop all of the attacks. Deku would realize that against this enemy, he needs to use his cloud armor. It's a pretty thick layer of cloud that he uses to stop any knife attacks or to, get any heavy damage, since it cushions it. It gives him a little bit of a shock absorption. So Stain would be trying to cut Deku, but the only area that he could possibly cut would be his face. So Stain would actually have a pretty hard time. Stain would actually proceed to whoop Deku in hand-to-hand combat, and Deku would be surprised by what is going on. This is when Ida would yell, "No! Leave him! He's mine!" And Deku would say, "You're in no condition to be fighting him," as he jumps away and goes onto his Nimbus and takes out his staff. This is when he goes into whack Stain with it, but Stain would cut the pole in half. And Deku would be like, "Oh crap." This is when he would basically hit a sign and go flying off of his Nimbus in a sort of Harry from Spider-Man 3. I don't know if you guys watched that, but he would fall onto the ground. And this is when Stain would try to stab into his cheek to get him blood to paralyze him and run away. But Deku would turn himself intangible, and Stain's knife would go straight through him. This is when Deku would basically uppercut Stain, sending him flying, and then trap him with his clouds, not making Stain able to move. This is when the heroes would arrive, and Deku would basically update all of them on what had just happened with the hero killer Stain. This is when Endeavor would arrive, and Stain, after seeing Endeavor, would gain the amount of willpower that he needs to break free. He would break free using nothing but his will alone, and this is when the video would be taken. It would be much different. It wouldn't be using his blood binding or his blood, what is it called? His bloodthirst, what's it called? His bloodlust. He wouldn't use his bloodlust to get them all to be terrified. He would just have a video of him telling the heroes basically along the same lines, and that's what would cause the difference. Now, before he can actually do anything, Deku would trap him in the cloud again in a way thicker barrier, so this time he wouldn't be able to get free. Now, after this, Deku would have basically saved Ida as well as Native, and things would have been fine until the Nomu came in and tried to grab Deku. Deku would be caught off guard and would definitely be flown away, but he would then turn intangible and chase after the Nomu. And this is when Endeavor would basically grab one of his fire spears and throw it straight into the Nomu's brain, killing it on impact. And Deku would jump away because it almost got him. his Nimbus would catch him and he would fly back to them. Now that whole situation would end, and this is when he would actually meet the dog police officer. And he would basically go to canon with the dog person basically telling him that, like, under normal circumstances, you would have been thrown in jail. And Ida, as well as Todoroki, being like, what the fuck? He saved them. And Deku would just be quiet until the dog man would basically look at him and say, however, what you did was a great help to the heroes, and I commend you for it. However, you cannot take credit for this, and we'll be giving it to the hero Endeavor, so, you know, Gran Torino won't be getting in trouble or anything. And Torino would basically have his hero license suspended for a little while, just like in canon. Endeavor would end up taking the credit, and yeah, that's really it. So, yeah, let's see how long this video is. 25 minutes. I can definitely give you guys more. So, yeah, that would happen. Now, they would get back to class, and Ida would be fine and also do his little thing with the, I'm going to keep the scars, a way to remember what had happened, you know? Like, I need to grow from this experience looking ass. No, really though, you would basically do that. And yeah, the final exams would basically come up. No, wait, not the final exams. Before that, it's the race. So this is when they would arrive, and Bakugou and Deku would see each other for the first time again, and would basically look at each other and say, so, what'd you learn? And Bakugou would be like, I learned nothing. That bastard wasted my time. Deku would basically proceed to tell Bakugou that he just basically learned to fight hand-to-hand combat more, and that's really it. Bakugou would get a little jealous, admittedly, saying he probably got way more ahead of him than what he already was. Now, yeah, that'd basically be it. So the race would start, and I'm just gonna say it. Deku would whoop. He would save All Might before Sero, before anybody on the team, and Bakugou would be like, fucking Deku, you're always one step ahead of me nowadays. Bakugou would say, but this isn't gonna stop me. I'm gonna surpass you, Deku. Now, we all know that's not gonna happen. Come on now. These cloud powers they're too much, man. They're too much. And yeah, he would basically pass. Now, this is when everything else would go to canon as well with the race, and the final exams would come along. Now, when the final exams happened, Deku and Uraraka would basically proceed to walk up to each other, and Uraraka would basically ask him to help her in the training department, and Deku would tell her that he was actually just about to ask her about that. Now, this is when Deku would tell her where they want to do this, and Uraraka would basically say that she lives alone, so if he wants, they could go train over there and help her master things. So Deku would basically smile at her, and he would basically look at Uraraka and say, hey, I have an idea. This is when Uraraka and Deku would walk up to Mei Hatsume's lab and basically request some gadgets, some levitating gadgets for her to fly through the air and navigate, not just float all crazily. And Mei Hatsume would basically go on and create some of those, and she would say that it would take about 2 weeks, maybe a little longer. And Deku would basically smile and say, okay, I guess we gotta get to work on your balance in the air and your flight as well as combat. Uraraka would say, oh, I actually learned how to fight a little bit from Gunhead. And Deku would say, that's awesome, then I guess we just gotta focus on making you levitate. So they would spend the entire time basically helping Uraraka levitate, and Deku would create cloud padding on the floor, so every time Uraraka would fail, she wouldn't get hurt at all and just would fall on a soft cloud. Now, Uraraka would basically thank Deku because after a couple of hours, she would have a little bit of a hang on making herself float. Now, this is when Uraraka would actually be doing it one more time and would actually end up falling on top of Deku. And in a sort of Mei Hatsume fashion, how do I put this? Her boobs would be in his face. Now, Deku would see this and be like, oh, wow. He would blush pretty hard. And Uraraka would blush before saying, oh, I'm sorry, Deku. She would get off, and Deku would basically hug her tight and be like, no, like, this is kind of nice. Uraraka would start blushing like crazy and start floating in the sky. And this is when Deku would be like, you did it. Uraraka would be like, huh? And just be floating in the sky like, ah. Now, Deku and Uraraka would basically proceed to just watch movies and talk for the rest of the night at her house. And this means that they would definitely be flirting. Along the way, they would definitely proceed to make out. And let's just say that Deku ends up asking her out. They spent a couple more days training on making Uraraka levitate and honing more skills, as well as coming up with more ideas for Uraraka to use with her quirk. Guys, comment down below some things that you think Uraraka would be able to do with her quirk so we can make her more broken, because I don't want to have a weak girl as his ship. I need me a strong female for Deku. So yeah, she would basically get those abilities. I'll probably mention them in the next video, maybe later today. If you guys hit 20, let's go with 21 likes. Let's go with 21 likes. And yeah, so Deku. Oh yeah. So Uraraka would basically be dating Deku now, and that would become a thing. And let's just say that they would basically go on dates a little more than training. So Uraraka would be a little behind, but she would have definitely learned way more new things, as well as a little more on the combat side. Now this is when they would take the written exam, and Deku would actually pass no problem, as well as Uraraka. She would basically get like a high C, and Deku would be kind of proud of her. He would say, "Good job." He would basically tell her that she also needs to practice on her brain skills, and Uraraka would kind of blush and be like, "Oh, what are you trying to say?" And Deku would be like, "Oh no, I'm just saying like it could help you in the long run." And Uraraka would say, "Just kidding with you." Now, this is when the actual final exam would happen, and Deku and Bakugou would be put against All Might. But this time, All Might would have he's still gonna have his restraints. All Might would have his restraints, and Bakugou and Deku would basically suggest that they just escape All Might, and Bakugou would say, "No, Deku, we gotta fight him. I want to see where I'm at." And Deku would proceed to say, "Okay, Bakugou, we'll fight him, but if things go wrong, we need to escape and run away." And Bakugou would basically proceed to say, "I can work with that." Now, this is when they would go in and bump fists and basically go into a front attack on All Might. All Might would smile and be like, "What are they thinking?" As he then says, "Heroes," and throws a smash right up and creating a giant amount of wind. This is when Deku would create a cloud barrier to stop Bakugou from getting flown away, as well as himself. And they would begin to rush on a Nimbus to All Might, since that's faster than Bakugou's explosions can take him. This is when Bakugou would jump off, and Deku would propel him, throwing him off the cloud, and Bakugou would go in for howitzer impact. All Might, however, would catch his head with his two hands and then slam him onto the ground, and Deku, seeing that, would get angry. This is when he would rush in there with the let's say 15% smash and hit All Might right in the face. But All Might would take the blow and basically turn his face at Deku, as Deku gets scared admittedly and then start trying to run away. But All Might grabs Deku's leg and tries to slam him the way he did Bakugou. But before he could, Deku went intangible, created a clone, and basically grabbed All Might from the back, trying to restrain him. But All Might would just pop, make the cloud clone turn into cloud and just break it. This is when he would basically go into a hand-to-hand fight and start destroying Bakugou and kind of destroying Deku. Deku would definitely take a couple hits since he wasn't fast enough to become intangible. And they would realize that they're not winning this yet. So Deku would basically proceed to create a barrier around All Might, the strongest he's ever created. And All Might would be stuck for quite a second, giving them enough time for Deku to create two portals and sending them outside of the test. So this means that they would escape and still win. And yeah, they basically win, but they basically end up still getting whooped as in canon. Not to the extent as in canon. No, actually Bakugou gets whooped even worse. But Deku is the one who takes the least amount of damage. They end up still winning, and that's where I'm going to be wrapping it up, boys. Go ahead and leave a like for part 4. If you guys hit 21 likes, then I'm going to be dropping part 4 around 6-ish. I think that sounds about right. I'm about around that time. Depending on when you guys hit the like goal, I'll definitely be putting out the next part. So what if Deku had Shirakumos powers? But yeah, with nothing else to say, Zether out.